Hey, this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva,
Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
and welcome to the Snobba West Show, the show for Apple snobs where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the Snobba West Show. We want to again thank you for your continued support and tuning in every week. If you want to get some exclusive content, watch the show live, you can head on over to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/SnobbaWestcast to get all of the details. With that, we are going to go ahead and kick it off with our first segment, the Lowdown, where we talk all things Apple. So we are coming off of a holiday break, the 4th of July here in the United States of America. And if I'm being honest, looking at topics for this week, lots of rumors regarding iPhone 15, lots of rumors regarding Vision Pro, what's going to be included, production delays. I mean, a ton of rumors that I honestly didn't really want to get into because again, they're rumors and honestly people really don't know. So I did come across a couple of things that I thought would probably be interesting to note. As you know, on the show, Terrance is the gamer of the two of us, and Apple has a new porting tool for macOS, and it just got its first update. And apparently, it's a pretty big deal for those in the gaming industry. So essentially, what this new is called game porting tool, it allows for developers to very simply port over their Windows games to a Mac with little to no effort. This is still in the beta stage, and I know that this is just the first update that it got, and it's a really big one. There's a lot of gaming nomenclature in here that I don't understand. But what the takeaway I get is that it's going to allow games to run natively on Mac that were originally created for Windows, and the performance is supposed to be through the roof. From this whole article on 95 Mac, we'll put the link in the show notes. That's what I gathered from that. Mr. Gamer, is that the crux of it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So basically, you developers won't have to recode or redevelop for Mac OS. I'm not a PC gamer. I'm not a computer gamer. Let me say that. I'm not a computer gamer. But if I were, I would probably have a Windows machine because most of the titles that are not uber popular. So you think of your popular games that people play cross platform across all of the uh platforms, whether it be Xbox, whether it be PlayStation, whether it be uh Mac or not Mac, whether it be PC.
Hmm.
You can play those games. Pick your poison, right? There are some games that people just build for PCs,
Hmm.
and if you have a Mac, you just SOL, right?
SOL.
Right. So this game porting tool, I guess it's, the developers love it. There's got some good reviews, but if you are a Mac fan, you should be looking forward to this game porting tool and your developer, because that just means more people get access to your games if you don't have to do a whole lot
Hmm.
to make your game available for Mac.
So I know that Xbox is a Microsoft product. I don't know if you know this or not. Does that equate to Xbox games or no? I don't know if they're like Xbox games that can be played on a PC and vice versa. I'm just not well
Well,
versed in
so
that.
it's up to the developer, right? The developer
Mhm,
has to say this is available. This title is available for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, right?
mhm,
Um, Xbox or Microsoft themselves do not make titles right now. What
mhm,
they do is specifically what to put it in current news. Microsoft is trying to buy Activision. Activision
mhm.
does make games. They make Call of Duty, for example, and a couple other
And those
games.
are
But
PC games?
well, Activision. So here's the argument, right? Activision makes games for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC.
Mhm.
If Microsoft buys Activision, then you could make the jump and say eventually Microsoft may say Call of Duty, we just making that for Xbox. It's going to be an Xbox exclusive,
Mhm.
similar to how PlayStation has games that are PlayStation exclusives, similar to how developers make a PC game and you can only play it on a PC up until this um, game porting tool, which will allow developers who are making games just for PC also say, well, even though we just made it for PC via this tool, it's now available for Mac users, right?
Hmm.
But to answer your question, Microsoft themselves doesn't make games. They just make the platform, and then the developers have to say, we're going to code for Microsoft, we're going to code for PlayStation, and we're going
Gotcha.
to code for PC now slash Mac.
Gotcha. And I think maybe that was my confusion. I was assuming that because they made the hardware, they made some of the games as well. But
No,
it would make sense that they would try to acquire a company as big as Activision because it looks like it goes across multiple platforms. Okay.
right, but that's the pushback though. The pushback is, will Activision games remain cross-platform, or will
Mm,
Microsoft be like, "Yeah, we ain't doing that no more."
gotcha.
They say they're
Yeah,
not.
because
Microsoft say
yeah.
we're not gonna do that. We wanna make everything
Ah,
cross-platform,
people can change their mind or people can lie up
and people always have
front.
changed their minds. Minds have been
Right.
changed all the time.
Right. Yeah, because I know it's one of those things where, people are very particular about their games and their gaming systems and what specifically on this gaming system, what's specifically on that. And, you gamers are pretty hardcore when it comes to your systems and your games.
Well, we
So,
used to be. We used to be prior to online gaming. When there was no such thing as online gaming, you really were in a camp, right? You
mhm,
were in Xbox camp, or you were in PlayStation camp, or you're in you're in console, which includes Xbox and PlayStation versus PC, which is PC, Microsoft Windows, right?
mhm,
You're either in Xbox or PlayStation, or you're in console versus PC. Now that I can't think of hardly any games that come out now that are not or don't have an online portion proponent, right?
mhm,
Like you think of your popular, all the popular games. The one I play all the time is Call of Duty.
mhm,
You know, we want to play against as many people as possible because that keeps the games more interesting. And you want to be the best, right? So you
mhm.
can't be the best if you only playing with Xbox people, or
Right,
you're only playing with PlayStation people, or you're
right.
only playing with console people versus computers, right? You want
Mhm.
to say, I'm the best. I don't care where you playing it
Hands
on.
down.
Right. So that's kind of squashed a little bit that us against them attitude, because
Mhm.
you want to welcome everybody.
Right. All right. Yeah, like I said, this was definitely out of my depth, but what I saw people saying, it was like, this is huge. Oh my God, this is amazing. And I was like,
We'll
okay, all
see.
right.
It all depends on how many Mac people out there really want to get into gaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apple has always, it's Apple Silicon. They've always said, "Oh, games, 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 games,
Mm-hmm.
games." People are like, "Yeah, we'll see." Right
Yeah.
now that they're making it able for developers to make more games available on Mac and Apple Silicon, we'll see if the the what's the word, the demand
Okay.
for Mac gaming machines can rival PC gaming machines. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're a computer gamer, you're not building a Macintosh to play games off of. You're building a
Mm-hmm.
PC. You got the
Mm-hmm.
tower, you got all of the whatever the case may be.
Your racks and all your
Right,
things
right.
lined up.
But
Yeah.
now, Apple Silicon's out, which is all these leagues better than all the Intel
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Now you got Mac Minis that can be beefed up. You got the Mac Studio. You got the Mac Pro. All these different machines, that are all powerful now. Now don't take nothing for a developer to say, "Oh, it's available on Mac too." We'll see
Mhm.
if that drives up the demand for Mac users wanting to play PC games. I don't think so, but we'll
Okay.
see.
And that was gonna be my next question, like, as a gamer, do you foresee, people really trying to make that shift from PCs
I
over to
doubt it.
Macs for gaming?
I doubt it. PC, you can build a dope PC. You can customize
Mhm.
a dope piece, a gaming tower for like $3,000 to $5,000, right?
Mhm.
That sounds like a lot,
Mhm.
but one is heavy customizable. You can pick this graphics card, you can pick this audio card, you can pick this cooling system, you can pick this much RAM, you can pick
Mhm.
this much storage space, you can pick these colors, you can do all that. You can't do that with a Mac. You
And
get
I'm pretty
a
sure it's easier to change out if you wanna upgrade rather
right.
than
You
doing
can
it on a Mac.
troubleshoot, you can
Yeah.
you can, you can customize the operating system as much as you want to on Windows. Can't do that with Apple. You get
Yeah.
what you get.
Yeah.
So,
It'll be
w
interesting to see what the benchmarks start to look like when people start, I guess, testing out this porting tool to see if it does give you this, huge bump in performance and if people will follow.
Yep.
Oh, interesting. Guess that's something to keep an eye out on. Next up, Apple Card is in the news and not for a very good reason. As we talked about when Apple Card was first announced, it was a partnership with the financier Goldman Sachs. It was touted as this huge advancement. As we both mentioned, Terrence and I both have Apple Cards. Well, it sounds like Goldman Sachs is trying to bail on the Apple Card as they said that they've had over $1 billion in losses and they're trying to kind of hand off the this part of the business over to Amex. So again, like I said, this partnership initially was highly touted as revolutionary. It was going to change and it was going to be so great. But right now, there seems to be some mixed messaging about how this partnership is going to go forth. On one hand, they're saying we're still committed, we're still, doing all of these things to make it grow. And on the other hand, it's like, but we're losing a ton of money, and all those sorts of things. At any time you're in any type of financial type of business. Nothing is quick, nothing goes very quickly. And it's complex and complicated to transfer, I think it's up to like 6 million Apple Card users at this point. And I was like, well, what's the really big deal? Why are they losing so much money when they have so many users who have Apple Cards? Well, there are a couple of things that were pointed out. So a huge thing that they said, one of the things was charge off rates, and that's when people don't pay their bills or miss their payments. Goldman Sachs has a 2.93, almost 3% rate in comparison to Chase and Bank of America, who have, I think what was it, a quarter of that. I'm trying to find the actual number. Oh, it's double of what Chase and Bank of America have. Another thing is, um, which I'm surprised about. The second thing, it's who's getting, Apple Cards. They're saying a quarter of the applicants or people who get approved, they have a FICO score, i.e., credit score of below 660. Whereas with Chase, that's about 12%, and with Bank of America, it's about 3.7. Who are with FICO scores that are 620 and under. And I was surprised by that because a lot of the initial issues with the Apple Card was people saying, I have this high credit score, I have this high salary or net worth, and I'm not getting approved. So that kind of shocked me as well. But I think the biggest thing that they're losing money on are fees. Apple Card doesn't charge as many fees as some of your other credit card companies. They will nickel and dime you on everything, whether it be transaction fees or there be late fees, any of those things. And Apple necessarily doesn't do that. So I wanted to get your thoughts on Goldman Sachs now trying to kind of back out of this partnership.
Uh, in short, Goldman Sachs wasn't ready. They was not ready. They were itching to get into the consumer finance space.
Mhm.
Um, Goldman Sachs does not ring a bell as far as I'm concerned with consumer finances. They are on something on another level.
Investments mostly.
Investments, I don't know if that's commercial, equity
Mhm.
firms, whatever. More that they were on another level and they were itching to get into the regular people finance game. So
Mhm.
they at the beginning of this partnership, of course, who wouldn't partner with Apple, who their main customer is the consumer, right?
Mhm.
So they were itching to get into
Who are
this deal with
spending money on high-end, high-value tech.
right, but we're consumers, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Uh, so um, Goldman Sachs was like, bet, whatever Apple want to do, we with it. And whatever Apple want to do was, we not gonna. More people can get the card, less fees involved, and chasing people around for money. We ain't trying to do that,
Mhm.
right? Goldman Sachs was like, bet, we don't care, we do it anyway. Come to find out, Chase, Bank of America, all make their money by charging people with higher credit,
Mhm.
charging more fees, and
Mhm.
chasing people around when they don't pay.
Yeah.
That's how Bank of America, that's how they make their money. That's how banks
Mhm.
make their money. Chase was like, we don't care. We just trying to get into the game. So they're not making that money that Bank of America and Chase and some of the others are making. They're like,
Mhm.
wait a minute. You mean to tell me we can't make the same amount of money as y'all?
What, this how y'all make y'all money? We didn't know that.
Right,
Oops.
exactly, and since they were new in the game, that didn't dawn on them for whatever reason, right? So now they're kinda like, "I don't know if this is a good this is a good part." This I'm not sure this was as a good of a partnership that we thought it was gonna be. Now,
Mhm.
it's probably still a good relationship,
Mhm.
but it's just not as good as they thought it was going to
Mhm.
be. So as a result, they're like, all right, well, we need to figure out how we can, at the very least, move the credit part off from
Mhm.
the partnership, right? We're still
Mhm.
going to deal with the Apple savings account. We're
Mhm.
still going to do some of these other things, but the credit card part, to where we make money when people don't pay their bill, we're not making that money. So we need to move that to somebody else. So word on not word on street, it'll be left to be seen to where if American Express picks up the credit part of the Apple card, and instead of it being backed by Chase, it'd be backed by American Express. Well, American Express, who they deal with, think as far as credit, as far as credit scores and credit worthiness and credit
It's on the
history,
higher end.
they deal with a higher end. So will that mean rates will be higher for credit card Apple card users? Will that mean credit scores are going to have to be higher for credit card users? And will that
Mhm.
mean fees be higher for Apple card users? Which,
Mhm.
that may kind of change who the Apple card is for, right?
Mm.
Apple card, when it came out, it was like, if you have an iPhone, then you're the Apple card market. That may
Mhm.
not be the case if
Right.
American Express picks it up, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So we'll definitely see how that works. Maybe Apple may have to either allow uh, um, Goldman Sachs to charge some of these higher rates, or they may have to go to American Express, which like I mentioned, may kind of change the target for who gets the card
Mhm.
altogether.
Yeah. And one of the things that really stood out to this is these companies are making their money from charging people all of these extraneous fees. This is how
Outside
they're
of, in addition to just the interest rate, right? Just,
right.
I'm not trying to school nobody on finances, but when you pay with a credit card, you are telling the credit card company, I want to buy this thing,
Mhm.
but you get a little piece off of it in the
Mhm.
form of interest. So something
Right.
that costs me $100, I'm paying with this credit card at the end of the beginning of the next month. I'm not paying, I'm not paying $500, paying $505.
Mhm.
As a person using a card, I'm supposed to be okay with that. With the credit card company, like that's the whole reason why we want you, because we want that little extra, right? In addition to
Mhm.
that, they make fees for all these other things. If you miss the credit card payment, if you do this, if you do that, if you do this and you
You
do that.
use it in a different country, you use it at
Right.
certain vendors,
Yeah.
those types of things. And again, I think what this article says to me is, yeah, the partnership is, they're losing money, but the sticking point is
We want to
that
be
these
greedy too.
companies are making money off of people in, slightly nefarious ways by, racking up all of these ticky tacky, things. And it's just like a running tab
Hmm.
of 1% here, 5% here, 6% here. And all of those little percents add up. And Apple was like, we're not going to do that. And now they're saying, oh, snap,
Hmm.
this is where the money is. The
Right.
money is not in the interest rate. The
Right.
money is not in, the purchasing power. The money is in,
Fees.
charging you for every
Hmm.
little thing. So that's the thing that really sticks out. And I don't know how, if these companies realize how bad that makes them look.
It
And they
it
probably don't
it
care.
they don't care. Things are starting to change, right? If you look at history, um, investment banks used to make money off of fees. So every time you bought and sold a stock,
Hmm.
companies will make money off of that. Now, TD Ameritrade and some of them other big banks that deal with investments. Now nobody charges fees for just buying and selling stock. They make
Hmm.
commissions and fees on, if you're doing playing with margin and all these other things, right?
Hmm.
Um, things started to change with banks. Banks, even though they still kind of do it, they've kind of shied away from overdraft, 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 overdraft. Now, if you're just ridiculous with your budgeting, you got to
Right.
pay the piper, right?
Right.
But banks slowly or surely are starting to go away from charging you fees every time you to open a checking account and this and that and the third, right? So things are starting to change a little bit. Of course, there's some nefarious actors as far as it relates to consumers as well.
Hmm.
There are some people who are just not good with budget or are trying to get over. So,
Right.
but again, same thing with, you open up a Walmart, you got to expect some people to steal your stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you got to account
And
for
you
that.
have insurance for that.
That's
So
the
it's
cost of
like,
doing that's the,
we got to
right.
put that into the budget.
That's the cost of doing business, right?
Right.
Versus you do what some of these other the financial institutions will do is like if some people steal your stuff,
Mhm.
now you turn around chasing them out the parking lot, you knocking on their door, you going through all these links to get that theft back, you or you're making it harder for regular people who shop at Walmart and buy stuff and pay for it and don't steal. You're making it harder for them, to do their business, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
but things are starting to change. I
Yeah.
think credit cards and all of these fees are and mortgages are kind of like the
And
last.
federal regulations are really tightening up, which I think is causing a lot of these shifts. I don't think these companies are doing it out of their goodwill, but I think in some instances they've been doing some shady practices, and regulations are coming down and said, okay, you got to tighten this up a little bit.
Yep.
But yeah. All right. That is going to wrap it up for the lowdown, unless you had something else you wanted to talk about.
Mm-mm.
All right. Let's head on over to Second String, where we talk all other tech. If you are a Snobist, which is our Patreon supporter, you would have gotten the lead into this conversation regarding some of the turmoil that is going on over at that bird app that is known as Twitter over the past 4 or 5 days. Well, some of those things, the rate limit, we went into detail about that. TweetDeck, which was a popular tool that Twitter users could use to post and basically, see their feed without actually having to be in the app. They've made some changes to that where you have to be verified to use that feature. They're putting that behind a paywall now, whereas before it was free. And I think back in October when Elon Musk took over Twitter, all of these Twitter alternatives kind of spun up. You had Hive, you had Mastodon, you had, I think there was one called the Cookout. You had all of these different um, Twitter alternatives. Well, in the wake of all the turmoil that's going on at Twitter, I don't think this was necessarily aligned. I think it just kind of happened. But two new Twitter alternatives have come out on the scene, and people are really talking about it because over the last 4 or 5 days, Twitter has been not just a dumpster fire for the content, but for its performance and usability. So, first up is Spill, which is actually a new social media app um, that is centered around the infamous Black Twitter. So, this is a Black owned alternative by actually two former Twitter employees. And they created this app where Black culture is centered, but it's not exclusive to Black folks. It's in its beta stages. So you need an invite code and all those things. So there was a lot of conversation on the Twitter timeline about getting codes and all those types of things. So this new Spill app, which again is only available on iOS at this time, Android is supposed to be coming later. But it's one of those things where this is a new contender for a replacement for Twitter. The other app is called Threads, and this is coming from the likes of Instagram. So essentially, think of this Threads as, I think the way it was um, uh, kind of pitched is it's basically like the comment section of Instagram, but in a more microblogging type of format. So again, Spill is already out there. You can get either on the wait list, or if you know somebody, you can get an invite code and get in on the beta. And Threads actually launches on
Word on the street.
Thursday.
Word on the street tonight. I saw
Yeah.
something shortly before before we started recording that they're pushing it up to today. For what reason I don't know. I assume to capitalize on all of the people deciding where they're going to go. Like you said, like you mentioned, Spill a lot. It picked up in popularity over the
Hmm.
weekend. And I'm thinking maybe Mark Zuckerberg was like, we need to grab those people. Can't let them leave Twitter and go someplace else. So let's bump up the availability of their Threads social media platform.
Right. I was actually trying to share it so it doesn't look like it wants me to. Um, but if you go into the um, Instagram app, and if you go to the explore page, and if you type in Threads in the search bar, a little like pink, looks like ticket, will occur on the very far end of that of the search bar. And if you click on that, you'll get this visual, and it'll give you the launch date, the launch time. It'll tell you, it's basically using your username from Instagram, gives you a QR code that will also link you to the app store to get the new app. And it's very kind of slick the way they're doing it. They're trying to make it like an event, and as Terrance mentioned, it's one of those things where, with all of the stuff that's going on with Twitter, they kind of moved it up a day. Instead of on Thursday, July 6th, it's supposed to be, what is 7 o'clock now? So it should actually be
Yeah.
it
So
should be up.
right. So while you look at that, right? Um, so I actually got a hold of the Spill app and have been on it for today.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm on it, but I haven't really dug into it too deep.
What I appreciate about the Spill app is that it looks and behaves, the interface is something new, right? Um, you can tell it has a look and feel, right, of its own
Mhm.
versus Blue Sky versus Mastodon to a certain extent. Mastodon is kind of similar, it kind of has its own look or feel. But for the most part, and even from the screenshots that I've seen of threads, they are all, in my opinion, looking to be a, like you mentioned, a replacement for Twitter, right? What I think is going to be a problem for these new upstarts is the idea that they're trying to be a replacement for Twitter. I think that's going to be, I think they should focus on being a platform in and of itself that's different, that's new, that's fresh, that is different, not necessarily a
Mhm.
replacement. Because when people are looking for a replacement, if I'm looking for a replacement of this pen, I want a pen that does the exact same thing. It's just I'm
Mhm.
not using this one anymore. I'm using this one now, right? Versus using a whole new way of entering information, unlike a pen, right?
Mhm.
That's what I appreciate about Spill a little bit more. Again, I haven't played with Blue Sky. I haven't played with Mastodon. I haven't
I
played with
play with Blue
Threads.
Sky.
But from the screenshots that I've seen and how people talk about these other apps, is they are looking to be a replacement. So
Mhm.
how you tweet is the same, how you retweet is the same, how you like a tweet, how you quote a tweet, how
Yeah.
you put in text, how you put in pictures, gifs,
Yeah.
it's all the same, right? The interface is kind of the same. What I can say about Spill is it does look a little different. It does have a, that's what the word I was looking for. It has an aesthetic
Yes.
that is trying to go after, in addition to being centered around, Black culture. So some of
Yeah.
the ways we talk, some of the culture, some of the trends are, centered around Black folks. But it's open to anybody, so anybody
Yeah.
wants to um, can join. What's the word? Spill. You can, but just know that it's going to be heavy in African American vernacular English,
Right.
and if not, I don't want it to be, honestly. And I'll say this one thing and I'll let you join in. I don't want Spill to be for Black folks only.
Mhm.
What I want it to be is I want the community to make sure that we are not following the same type of um, going in the same direction that some people do, which is why people are leaving Twitter. Leaving
Mhm.
Twitter because people argue. They're leaving Twitter because for a myriad of reasons, which are actually the users, right? Because Twitter
Right.
itself is not doing anything.
It's the community aspect
Exactly. So you
that
can't
I
leave.
hope gets ported over to
Right.
Spill.
And what I hope people don't do is port the community of Twitter over to a Spill or even a
Right.
Thread or a Blue Sky or a Mastodon, because you're just replicating the same problem over on this new thing.
On a new platform, right. And, I'm on Blue Sky. Blue Sky looks and feels definitely a lot like Twitter. On Spill, you don't have the typical retweet, they're different it's different nomenclature for comments, for
and,
sharing,
and
for
hashtags, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's a different vibe. That even the color scheme and the look and feel of it is giving you a different vibe. And honestly, to me, because former Twitter engineers created this, it makes sense that they aren't trying to necessarily duplicate the interface, but what I think they are trying to do is replicate the community that was built
Around Black Twitter
over
specifically.
specifically around Black Twitter. And again, Black Twitter is just a community inside of Twitter. And
Right.
people who are on Black Twitter, they're in different pockets of Twitter as well. So I think the thought behind it is, let's bring community the good parts, the original parts of Twitter that we all loved
Right.
into
Without the
this space
negatives, like
without
one.
all of the BS.
Right, right, and one a lot of things that they were doing, what one of the things that I could see starting to happen is a lot of gatekeeping,
Mhm.
and definitely, sure you want to, keep the community true to the intent,
Right.
but, trying to, gatekeep is a whole whole 'nother thing, and, that's one thing that I could see being a problem for Spill.
Mhm.
Instead of just saying, all right, let's focus on why we're here, you focusing on the negative, right? And that's
Right.
what eventually brings the community down is when you're trying to focus on all this negative stuff that's coming in. And instead of ignoring it and saying, remember why we're here, you bring attention to the negative stuff. And
Yeah.
like I've always said, people on social media, all they want is attention. And if you give it to them, whether you are saying, I follow everything you do, or you're
Mhm.
saying, I hate your guts. Either
Mhm.
way, you had to tweet that, you had to type that, you had to enter
Yeah.
that, and that's what I wanted, right? So
Yeah.
hopefully, like I said, especially with all of them, not just Spill, with all of them, you if you are leaving Twitter because you hate Twitter, make sure you are moving on to something new with a new attitude, not with the same
Right.
attitude that you had over
Right.
on Twitter.
Absolutely. Because again, this is still people at the end of the day. And whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on Hive or any of the other ones, if you're a crappy person on Twitter and you go over to Spill and still be a crappy person, it's no different.
Right.
You're just taking that same mentality over into a new platform. And I did because going back to Threads, it did indicate that it was being moved up. But again, I did a little trick of getting like the little QR code that kind of shows you when it launches. It still
Mhm.
says Thursday. The app is still not up in the App Store, at least on iPhone. Um, but I don't know. When I was doing looking up stories for the show, it did mention that it went live for a little bit and they pulled it back.
Oh,
And you can so I don't know if that was like a fake launch
I think
or
that's a
a
marketing tactic.
mistake. Yeah.
That's
And
in my opinion.
yeah, and you can go over. There is a web preview if you just want to see what it looks like. But I'm thinking, now they have a bunch of buzz around it. They said they were going to release it early. I think if they release it early, it's probably going to maybe be like a midnight thing, something to build up the hype around it because now they kind of gave a little, they accidentally put it online and they took it back and they said they were going to
Mhm.
move it up. My thing, if it were me and I were running Instagram, Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, keep the original date and just do like a huge marketing campaign on social media hyping it up because it's already in people's radar. It's already in the focus, especially capitalize on the hellscape that's going over on Twitter to kind of get people to go and pre-order or set up notifications to get your app rather than all this back and forth. But again, I
And
don't work for them, so I
and just
guess
looking
that's their thing.
and just looking at a couple of these, screenshots, it kinda looks like Twitter, even Threads. Maybe
Mhm.
I'm looking at it wrong. Well, it kinda looks like it's like a if Instagram and Twitter had a baby, and I guess that's what
Mm.
Threads is going for. But
Right.
again, if you're trying to make a competitor, are you making a competitor or are you making a replacement? Again, and if
Mhm.
you're making a replacement, you're trying to uh assimilate, you're trying to
Mhm.
imitate the same things, which again, what you're going to end up doing is assimilating and imitating the community. And in 5 years from now, we'll be talking about Threads, the same way we're
Yeah.
talking about Twitter, because it's not new. I can't take any more social media platforms. So even with Spill, I'm kind of
Uh-huh.
half-heartedly looking at it. I haven't made any sort of declarations. I'm all right, I'm leaving this and I'm leaving that and I'm
Mhm.
doing all these things, or
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure integrate Spill into my everyday social media, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
You know, the only way I would consider doing that is if it's a new experience, because I'm
Yeah.
tired of the same old, even LinkedIn is just Facebook for professionals,
For
right?
professionals, yeah.
They have the same conversations, they do the same back and forth. You got
Yeah.
the same businesses trying to get to you. It's no different than people trying to be your friends. Now I
Yeah.
got recruiters all day long trying to tell me about jobs, which is no different
Right.
than some new Facebook friend trying to tell me about, some chain thing to where copy and post this on your page and let me know if you're real. It's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
tired of the same old, same old. I want something new.
Right. So yeah. So we'll see I guess what the progress that threads can make. And for me, honestly, the way that Meta does its business, specifically around Facebook and Instagram, those practices as far as your data and what's available, what they're selling, to me, it's going to be, the same thing because again, this is how they make their money and this is how they don't charge you a fee to use a service. So this is just another way for them to kind of scrape your data and get more data points
And not just that,
for
get more
folks.
users
Users, yeah.
from the word go, right? The only problem I see with Spill is everybody's trying to find each other.
Mhm.
So there isn't a lot of meaningful conversations yet
Yeah.
because everybody's trying to get followers. They're trying to find their tribes. They're trying
And
to,
figure out what the icons mean because the icons are
yeah.
different.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the only negative about something new, something fresh. It's new
Yeah.
and fresh, and we're all trying to figure it out together, which means you gotta wait. You gotta be patient and wait for the
Yeah.
thing to grow organically versus like threads. If you're on Instagram, click, click,
Mhm.
click. Now you're on threads.
Yeah.
Same people, same communities, the same feel, right? Which
Mhm.
is for a lot of people, they don't want to do nothing new.
Yeah.
They want familiar, they want
Yeah.
comfortability, they're familiar with Instagram, they're familiar with Meta. So Threads is just a property of that, then there's greater chance more people are going to get on there early, which may indicate that has legs versus
Yeah.
something new. It's going to take a while to mature.
Yeah. I saw someone equate it to the first day of school, and I was like, that's exactly what it is. You're
Hmm.
trying to find your locker, trying to find your classes, trying to find your friends, trying to get acclimated to the environment. So I was like, that's a very good equivalent. So yeah, so new social media apps are loading. If any of you are on or have any thoughts, definitely let us know what your thoughts are on Spill if you have that app and Threads when it does officially launch. All right, that is going to wrap up Second String. Next up, we're going to head on over to For the Culture, where we talk about culturally relevant things, whether it be on social media, whether it be in society, community, and sometimes just, anything we want to talk about. So on this week's For the Culture, I saw this on someone posted this, I think maybe on Instagram, and I was like, they are 100% right. If America had a black mama, her birthday party would have been canceled. So again, we celebrated those who celebrate the 4th of July on this past Tuesday, but America hasn't been so nice. Particularly not so nice over the last couple of days, particularly on Friday when those three different rulings came down from the Supreme Court, banning affirmative action in some higher education admissions. The the ruling regarding being able to discriminate for providing services to LGBTQ um, folks, and there was a third one that literally just slipped my brain.
It was one, two, and student loans.
Yes, student loans. So the student loan cancellation that President Biden put forth, where you could get up to 10,000 $10,000 forgiven, or 20,000 if you had another certain type of loan. All three of those things came down, back to back to back, And then America's birthday was a couple of days later. So America is out here doing some things that people are saying they shouldn't have a birthday party for.
Or upholding what America was meant to be in the first place,
Yeah.
depending on which side you lean, right?
Yeah.
Um, this is not surprising considering the makeup of the Supreme Court, right?
Mhm.
You know,
And the way they got there.
you got a heavy conservative Supreme Court. Uh, Trump did a good
That's
job,
the most yeah, that's the most damage.
right,
Yeah.
as far as forcing his Supreme Court nominations in, and this is the end result. In addition to going back to abortion and that whole thing,
Mhm.
they are running the playbook. Um,
They
it's
played the long
unfortunate.
game.
Yeah, right. It's unfortunate to, affirmative action, because the whole point of affirmative action is to right wrongs. So if you are striking down affirmative action, you're essentially saying there was nothing wrong to begin with,
Mhm.
right? Same thing with discriminating against LGBTQ. The same people who will say you can't discriminate against me for being a Christian, you can't discriminate against me for wanting to be married to marriage to are this are this it's kind of hypocritical
Mhm.
because you don't want to my Second Amendment rights to bear arms should be protected. All these things that I believe in should be protected, but
Mhm.
some of these things that
Stuff
some
I
other
don't
people
believe
believe in,
in.
yeah, no, we shouldn't protect those, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hypocritical to where if you're an American citizen and you just happen to be gay, bisexual, whatever the case may be, you know, um, it would it's it would feel like you don't feel welcomed as a member of this community. If I pay taxes, if I spend money, if I follow the rules, then I should be protected under those same rules. And when the Supreme Court strikes those down, it's kind of this is a slap in the face. You know what I'm saying?
And then
Um,
take it even further to the loans, all those PPP loans that people got forgiven, a lot
right.
of folks who
Should,
are elected.
yep.
And these are hundreds of thousands of
Mhm,
dollars in loans,
mhm.
millions even in some case.
Right.
And they
So
don't want to these $10,000 to be forgiven.
right, right. Well, so the tricky thing about that is they don't want it to be federally mandated that they be forgiven. Now, if a company wants to decide to forgive student loans, but the problem is a lot of these student loans are government backed student loans, right?
Right.
So, Biden wanted those to be forgiven, not necessarily all loans. So if you have a
It's
student
the
loan,
federally based loans,
right,
yes.
right. So if you have there's some other companies that do it, and if you have those loans, then this don't apply. But those government backed loans to where people were taken advantage of, people just signed up for them because America is you go to high school and you better go to college if you want to get a
Yeah.
job.
If you
So
wanna get a job, yeah.
people felt the pressure. I got to go to college. I got to go to college, or else I'm not going to be a contributing citizen. So they sign up for all these loans, and now the government owns these loans. The government is making money hand over fist in these loans, and they didn't provide the security that they said you needed because now
Mhm.
these same people with these degrees are finding a tough time to find a job because of
Yeah.
the government.
Yeah.
It makes sense for the government to be like, our bad. We're going to forgive these loans
We
up to a
messed
certain
up.
amount, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully that frees up your pockets, that frees up your ability to put that back in the United States. Because what
Mhm.
what are people going to do if I don't have to pay $20,000 in student loans? Unfortunately, most people are not going to save that money. Most people are not going to, they're going to turn
They're
back
gonna spend
around
it.
and spend that money, which
Yeah.
good for the banks, good for the companies, good for the government. But
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it wasn't looked at that way. I guess, some of I'm not sure what the conservatives or whomever the conservative justice, I didn't read the opinions for these
Mhm.
things, but it just seems like a slap in the face for a lot of American citizens, right? And it's like, how do you feel? how your country is protecting you when they are left and right striking down all these things that apply to a lot of people, not just a
Yeah,
small amount of people, not
a
just a
lot.
certain group, not just a certain sect, a large swath of people with these couple rulings, and even going back to abortion with women's rights and things. It's like,
Mhm.
how is these rulings um um what's the word, mirror what the American
Mhm.
people look like? It doesn't.
Right.
It's like
It doesn't.
you're catering to a
A
small
very
group of
handful of
people,
people. Yeah.
right, who feel like, they are losing their grip as far as the majority.
Yeah, and the Secretary of Education, I think, his name is Cardova. In his, statement when it was struck down, what I found particularly interesting, he called out specific vocalists against the student loan uh, amendment. Well, not amendment, the student loan bill or whatever
Mhm,
it's called.
mhm,
He called out, he was like, well, this person got, forgiven XYZ in PP loans. And the student loan forgiveness would help XYZ number of constituents. So he broke it down to say, your representative got forgiven hundreds of thousands of loans. If this were in place, this many 90,000. I think it was one, and it was a lot. It was 90,000, almost 100,000. I think it was one that was like almost 300,000 people who would have been helped by this. So to me, him linking the what they got forgiven and the people in their constituency who it would help, I was like, that needs to be on TV, just circulating, so people can actually see, what this actually does. And people are like, well, voting doesn't really matter. This is what it really boils down to. Again, Trump was horrible. We know he did a bunch of crappy things, but what he did, quote unquote, right in what he was put in office to do is to stack the Supreme Court 6-3 favorable. So anything that these companies, anything that their backers, want to get put forth that goes up to the Supreme Court, it will go in their favor. And that to me is fundamentally one of the biggest things that came from folks voting this guy in initially. And he's trying to run it back. And additionally, what they're going after next. A lot of people says, you took out loans, you should have to pay for them. If you're black, you shouldn't, get any type of reparation, you shouldn't get any type of help. What eventually is going to happen is they're going to come after your particular demographic. They're going to get to you. You may not be in the beginning parts of the people that they are striking down provisions for, bills for, but eventually they're going to get to you because the people who are really controlling this is, like you said, a very small population of people, and they're going to do all the things necessary to benefit them. And if you aren't in that small group of people, and let's be honest, it's typically straight, white, wealthy
wasps,
men.
wasp,
Yeah. If
white
you don't fit
Anglo-Saxon
it, yeah, if
Protestant.
you don't fit into that arc, they're coming for you. They're
So
not they haven't gotten to you yet, but they're eventually going to get there because it was just announced, I think Ron DeSantis, down in Florida, who is a presidential nominee, he just banned alimony in Florida. So now white women are
dude is
really
tripping.
upset and protesting, and LGBTQ people in Florida. He's rolled back some provisions, but it was wealthy LGBTQ members who were all for him. And now they're like, well, he lied to us. He tricked us. That's what they do. And it's
Right,
okay as long as it's not overtly something against them.
right.
They're for it. But when it gets down to them, then it's a problem. But at that point, you've let all these other groups
Yeah,
get harmed by this legislation. And now, unfortunately, it's your turn
chopping block.
on the plank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they expect everybody to galvanize around them. It's like, "No, where
Right.
was you when we needed your
When
help?"
we
Right?
needed you, right. We
So
told you this was coming.
there were some surprises. I'm reading this, story, to where, They didn't just run the gamut as far as the conservative-led Supreme Court justice. They
Okay.
did vote in favor to some things.
Okay, that's
Um,
good.
there was a Republican-led effort to weaken a landmark voting rights law. Instead, the Supreme Court, ruled in favor of black voters in Alabama in a congressional redistricting case. So basically, what that means is the voters will now have to redraw its congressional districts in a way that gives black voters more power. That's a
So it's reversing the redlining basically that
yeah,
they
to
put in
where
place.
well,
Okay.
it's not eliminating. I think they should eliminate it, but what they're
Mhm.
doing is they're allowing these voters who have been redlined out of
Mhm.
their power, allows them to redraw the
To get
line.
back in. Okay.
Right, 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 which still, I mean, you're righting a
It's still
wrong,
pretty crappy. Yeah.
but it's still a wrong, right? Um,
Right.
and then another thing was, even though Roe versus Wade, the abortion rights was knocked down, the court rejected a conservative-led effort. Again, conservatives led this effort to get a drug used in the most common method of abortion pulled from the market. The justices, the justices allowed the drug to stay in the market
Is
now.
that the Mystifropone or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah. So that's still legal and available to be, given out to people who need it. So that's just a couple. I'm not giving them no credit. I'm just saying, there are some things that to
There are
where,
some very small wins,
yeah, yeah,
mixed
it's
in with the big losses. Yeah.
like a bad news sandwich, right?
Yeah.
You get a bunch of bad news, and you get a little bit of good news, and then you get some
A
other
little
bad news
slice.
on top of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, still Supreme Court, the big things, the larger overarching things, the Supreme Court in the past couple years, they've been on a roll as far as the conservative Supreme Court.
Absolutely. And they're coming now for minority scholarships. And if you've been following the whole the affirmative action in college admissions portion of this, it wasn't led by an Asian American. I think they were just the face of it, and this guy is Canadian, who kind of brought, and I'm using brought in air quotes, this to the Supreme Court. um Folks were saying, you're pitting, other minorities against each other to make them think that the other minority is the issue
That's
when
always
it's
been the
not.
game plan.
That's
That
always that's all. I mean, they've been running that play and they've been winning with this play. But I say that to say now they're coming for minority based scholarships. Black and all other brown people are considered in that. So now they're coming for that. Next, I think they're probably going to start trying to come for HBCU federal funds. I think that's coming next. And it's
So,
one of
yeah, let
those
me read
things
some
where,
specifics. On
okay, go for it.
Thursday, Republican Speaker of Wisconsin State Assembly suggested he'll move to ban grants designated for minority undergraduate students. The Speaker, Robin Voss, responded to a tweet claiming a minority scholarship program designated for students who are Black, Indigenous, Hispanic, or uh, Vietnamese, Laotin, Laotin. I'm not sure
Laotian.
what yeah, and Cambodians descended amounted to quote discrimination. So I don't know if this is Republicans as a whole or stories are amplifying this one Republican speaker in a Wisconsin
But
State
if,
Assembly.
yeah, but if
Is doing.
honestly, similar to the abortion thing, if one state does it and it works, here comes the rest of them trailing. They're kind of opening the door to kind of lead them on in, unfortunately. And it's one of those things where it's okay to have affirmative action. In one of the arguments was affirmative action was upheld in admissions to military institutions. Legacy admissions was upheld. So if it's unfair to admit someone who was qualified, who meets the requirements to come in through affirmative action, shouldn't it also be struck down for a person who has the privilege of being a legacy or their family donated money? shouldn't that also be discriminatory as well for people who don't have family members who went to Harvard or teach at Harvard or donated money to Harvard? So it's one of those things where we know exactly what the purpose of this is.
Let me read this. Let me make sure people get the information.
Okay.
According to the National Archives.gov, the military is exempt from the statutes prohibiting discrimination in employment. Nevertheless, its affirmative action efforts prohibits quotas. The core of their strategy is to build the pool so that there are minorities and women fully qualified to enlist, succeed, and rise. So they want
Isn't that
black
this?
folks to make sure they get into the military,
Yep.
but not
But
as
not to
far as
regular college.
higher education, which,
Yeah.
again, it's like you mentioned, if it's affirmative action, it's affirmative action. It don't
Yeah.
matter where the person is going, whether they're going to a private school, a public
Public
school, a
school,
military
Secret
school,
Academy. Yep.
or we got, like you mentioned, legacy and endowment to where your daddy went to the school. So that means you get a shot. That's affirmative
Mhm.
action. It doesn't say affirmative action, but that's exactly what it
That's
is.
exactly what it is.
You are taking if you're gonna use their argument,
Mhm.
that spot that legacy is getting could have went to somebody else who
Somebody
was
else
qualified, but they
who
don't
was
get that
qualified.
spot, which again, that whole argument is dumb anyway, but if we're gonna
Dumb.
use that argument, let's use it across the
Let's use it
board.
across the board. Let's not pick and choose. Let's
Mhm.
not cherry pick. And that's what, and again, no one is surprised by who was bringing these challenges and who's backing this. This is what they intended to do all along. And unfortunately, some minority folks, some people of color are being used as pawns in this wider scheme, and they're just playing into their hands. And, it's where we are, unfortunately. And with the Supreme Court stacked the way it is, it's unfortunately going to be this way for a very long time, because many of the justices that the former guy got into seats are young folks in their 50s. So, and Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment.
Which is another problem in and of
Yeah,
itself, but
absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so America, I guess that's why it was rainy here mostly. Um your party got rained out a little bit down here.
mm.
Because you shouldn't have probably had a birthday party because you were
No,
being a little
actually, in
naughty.
my opinion, things are working as,
They intended,
yes, as
as the
in
founding fathers intended.
mhm.
Very much so. Very much so. Enough of that. We've been depressed enough with this. Let's head on over to the hookup for our tech tip of the week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, unbeknownst to myself and, a lot of people out there, when you get a new iPhone, when you download the new latest and greatest iOS, a lot of the features, a lot of the how-tos, a lot of the, "Oh, I didn't know you could do this," is probably scraped and published on the internet via tech websites, just general on the internet, right?
Mhm,
Well, actually, for every iPhone that's been released, for every iOS that has been released, there is manuals, actual manuals. Because like when you open up your new iPhone, there's no instruction booklet anymore, right? There's just
mhm,
stickers, and then there's a couple of disclaimers, and then that's it, right?
mhm,
But LifeWire, this website LifeWire, actually did a good job of listing out all of the iPhone manuals and all of the iOS manuals going all the way back to iOS 3.1, and then for the iPhones going all the way back to the iPhone 3G and 3GS. It also has, let me see, going down here. I think, yeah, all the way down to the 3GS. No, I didn't see any iPad manuals, but every iPhone from the 3G and the 3GS and then every iOS version all the way down to iOS 3. This LifeWire article did a good job of putting links to all of those iOS and iPhones. And for instance, with the iOS ones, you can go through the web and look at those that manual, and it's
Mhm.
pretty much just a link to Apple's iPhone website. And but they also do it as an Apple book. So if you
Hmm.
wanted to save it to your devices via Apple Books, to where a quick way to get back to them, you can download it as an Apple book as well. So that's my hookup for the week. If you ever wanted to see an actual manual of how to operate your iOS and how to do your iPhone, we'll put a link. Make sure to put a link in the show notes to where you can get to that via lifewire.com.
Cool. That is going to wrap up the show this week. We definitely want to thank you for tuning in. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find me all over the web at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And you can find me at Tech Savvy Diva all over the internets as well. Again, to connect, comment, share, support our show, you can head on over to snobwestcast.com to get all of the details. That's going to wrap up the show for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk soon.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.